Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Barry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is not duck, but that is what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Ethan Bull. Ethan is the co-founder of ProAssisting alongside his wife and business partner, Stephanie. ProAssisting is a company that connects and provides executive assisting to high-level business leaders. Now, Ethan isn't only about providing a service to business professionals. He takes it all to the next level of hospitality. Learning at a young age about hospitality in the restaurant business, he weaves these main principles with the executive assistants and every client that he works with. Now, Ethan provides a true north and helps executive assistants see their true value, and this is how Ethan and ProAssisting continues to better the pond. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan Bull. All right. Ethan Bull, CEO and co-founder with your lovely wife, Stephanie Bull.
She's actually a CEO.
She's a CEO. Oh, I made an error right out of the gate.
That's okay.
But you have the look of ProAssisting. And you obviously provide executive assisting for CEOs. We'll get into that. All the way hailing from Rochester, New York. It is so great to have you on the Better the Pond podcast, Ethan.
Warren, thank you so much for having me.
I just want to throw this out there. There's a couple things. A little bit of a shout out to Justin Breen, who obviously had connected us, and he's connected us to so many other people. So we had to give him a little bit of shout out on the podcast. And before we jump into the stuff too, I just wanted to make mention just recently that you were on USA Today, and then you've been in Forbes. You got your best-selling book, The 29-Hour Workday. And so we'll talk all about that. So we got to, here's all the credits and kudos of all the wonderful work that you're doing.
It's pretty crazy. We got a shout out in Forbes. We got a shout out in Entrepreneur Magazine. And I remember looking at those magazines when I was in high school and like, oh, maybe someday, because I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset. And so yeah, it's pretty crazy how far we've come. We put a lot of work into the book, and really feel it's the cornerstone of what we do and how we view what we do. And so it's been an interesting ride. Totally.
Cool. So, and we'll unpack a lot of those things as we have the podcast today. But before we jump into the questions, Ethan, just tell us a little bit about ProAssisting, what you're doing. Let my audience know what you're up to.
It's not like we started ProAssisting by putting a dartboard on the wall and throwing a dart and saying, what kind of business should we start? Our story is fairly typical, actually, both, from the perspective of leveraging what you've done as a career, working for employers, to doing what you do for clients instead. And both Stephanie and I have a deep career executive assistant experience supporting C-suite executives in billion-dollar organizations. That was all created during a 20-year time span in New York City. And then when our second son came along, we decided to sell our place and move to Rochester, New York, which is a completely different environment than Manhattan. And that kind of spurred us to look at our options. And we are firm believers that we think the business world is moving in the direction of independent, fractional service providers that allow small and medium-sized businesses to really punch above their weight, and we're part of that discussion.
So what exactly are you doing so we can give a description to my audience, let them know what exactly ProAssisting is about, so that, if they need your services, well, they know who to talk to.
I probably should have started there. So thank you for the reminder.
You're very
Um,
welcome.
ProAssisting is a fractional remote executive assistant service company. Uh, Everybody says to me, "Oh, what do you do as an executive assistant?" And the way we explain it is we provide support to a principal or a client, if you will, in kind of 5 different areas: being a business partner, a chief of staff, a project manager, an assistant slash scheduler, and a personal assistant. And by providing such a wide berth of how we are leveraged in that relationship, we're allowing that client or principal to have a 10-minute conversation with us and take their to-do list from 12 things down to 2.
Hmm.
And then we go off and perform those tasks and projects on their behalf while they focus on the 2 most important things on their to-do list. And this is giving them back time. And that is really the name of the game when you get right down to it.
Hmm. So to simplify that, while they're working on the business, your team is working in the business.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too.
Yeah. So you give
I may
them.
steal that.
Okay, you can steal that. And you know what? And if I may, right? You're giving your clients the gift of time.
When it works, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
it. The issue there is that to get to that point of a know, love, and trust relationship, having that foundation to where you can have that shorthand with your assistant to where they know what you mean when you say, take the presentation from Q3, adjust it with Q4 numbers, and update it with the new board members, that you can take that information and run with it. To get there, you do have to put in time onboarding and creating that relationship. So um, it's not a flick of a switch, but when it works, the time you save after that onboarding period will be there week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. So that's the goal.
You said something really important, and I think this is quite interesting when you say this. And I think it just says a lot about you. It says a lot about Stephanie. It says a lot about ProAssisting. Is because you're a virtual fractional, assistant service, but yet what you said was when you get to know, love, and trust, that's a very deep relationship. That is not a transactional service. That's a whole different level right there, Ethan.
Yeah, it's when it works, it's an intimate relationship. Absolutely. You're sharing things in your personal life as well as your business life. It transcends both of those. And and that's why we kind of created the business model we did.
Mhm.
We didn't want it to be transactional. So what did we do to make that happen? We limit the number of clients that our assistants has to 3 maximum. We require our assistants to be available and to their clients Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So they take their 3 clients and they're feathering that work in throughout the day. It allows the client to pick up the phone at 2:38 on a Wednesday afternoon, call their assistant, and about 8 times out of 10, the assistant's just going to answer the phone.
Mhm.
It is not a computer program. It is not a team of assistants. You're dealing with one person, and that person has the hard experience of being a top level executive assistant combined with the emotional intelligence and the soft skills that we really look for in this service that we provide and the partners that we partner with. And we compensate our assistants appropriately.
Mhm.
And that keeps them in our flock, if you will. And you know, allows them to know they're being compensated properly for their experience and create their own little business, um, under our umbrella based on that career experience of working for employers.
Hmm. Something you said there interesting. You said soft skills. And so here's my challenge. Is it soft skills or is it people skills?
Well, I think it all falls under the umbrella of emotional intelligence or EQ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I think of soft skills, I think people skills a lot of the time, but I also think holding yourself accountable, having a work ethic, being on time, um, keeping your own score, um, having situational awareness around a specific instance and being able to leverage that, which may go beyond people skills.
Yeah, the reason I just pick on that a little bit because I just say that people say soft skills, and I say, well, I don't think it's really. I don't believe it's soft skills at all. I believe it's people skills, and people skills are hard.
This just came to me, but I really believe that life is not black and white, but always a shade of gray.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could call them gray skills.
Great.
You know,
Okay.
it's that soft underbelly that is hard to teach unless someone is really open to doing that. We really want to take the service we provide,
Hmm.
which is something done to you, and raise it to a level of hospitality, which is how someone or something makes you feel. Now, you have to have the service in place first for then someone to raise that to the level of hospitality. But that gray area of moving from service to hospitality usually centers around those people skills and emotional intelligence.
I'm not a man of gray. I'm a man of color, but I'm going to run with that. That's fantastic. I will say one last thing, and then we'll move on. Is my so I'm going to do a shout out to my travel agent who does all my travel for my speaking, Tracy McGinnis. There's a shout out, but I call her my CMO. She's my Chief Migration Officer.
I
And
love it.
but I will say though, and just and just kudos to the work that you're doing, is because the amount of time and grief and everything that she saves me, like, and just the peace of mind, of the work that she does to help me with all my travel, that I don't have to, all I have to do is say yes. It is worth just spades. Like, there's no money. that the value is just so incredibly high. So, and that's just on one aspect of my world of travel. I know your people do it for, and yourself do it for a whole nother higher level of that, but how valuable it is.
Yeah, and the funny thing is taking a service and raising it to the level of hospitality, it doesn't cost anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mentality. It's an intangible. And so what you're also talking about, which we really lean into, is legacy knowledge. That she has this legacy knowledge that's built up around you as her client that she knows over a long period of time, and that she can look back to and know that, yeah, Warren's not going to like this flight. I'm totally not even going to show him this. Or I know this isn't going to work because of X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, I've got an idea to make this work. And that's all based on information that she's gathered over time about you and your business.
Yeah, she knows where I like to sit in the plane. She knows the hotels that I like. She knows the car companies. She knows all that. And again, yeah, we'll be going back to that, and that is that hospitality piece. But that knowledge gathering that she's done over time just makes my life so much better.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you there, Ethan Bull. So we talked about the company, but now let's get down into you. So what got you from being a gosling, and I mean, like, your beginnings? I know that you were born at a very young age. So when you started life to leaving the nest, when you went out on your own, whether you decided to do that on your own or you might have been gently nudged so you can see if you can fly, to where you are today. Ethan Bull, what's your backstory?
I'm an only child. I grew up with four parents, with no step siblings, and I am eternally grateful that all four of my parents really got along wonderfully, and still do. Um, my stepfather passed away in 2014, so that was a huge loss. But growing up through all my formative years and having four parents and four different perspectives, I think really went a long way to forming who I am. I grew up with an entrepreneurial father, in capital E entrepreneur, owning things from trailer parks to a bowling alley to a bar, a restaurant, a home building company. Um, you know, Growing up in that environment, my stepfather was a personal injury attorney, and owned his own office, which was very entrepreneurial in its own right, even though he was providing a singular service. Um, and so that really kind of pushed me to want to be an entrepreneur. And I went to a specialty business school in Boston, and then kind of had I wouldn't call it a crisis of conscience, but an adjustment in terms of wanting to marry my creative pursuits in terms of music with business. And then that led me to New York City to work in the film industry. And in entertainment, really the assistant role is the first kind of stepping stone for any number of different people in the entertainment industry. It's really your proving ground. Um, and then I kind of shifted into advertising and used the executive assistant position initially as a day job, so I could write scripts and shoot short films and run open mics all in New York City. And, and then you wake up 10 years later and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a career. And, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the progression in terms of uh, becoming a career executive assistant at a really high level. It wasn't the plan. I didn't think that I was going to be an EA when I was in high school or even in college. Um, but what was interesting is that I was able, both Stephanie and I were able to take that career and turn it into a business. And she's my guardrails. I'm the idea guy, and I think it's like peanut butter and jelly, and they just go well together. And that's how we got to where we are now.
So let me unpack a little bit about all this. First of all, where were you born?
Canandaigua, New York, where I'm sitting now, right outside of Rochester.
You
And
have
I
not gone far.
well, I didn't like growing up in Canandaigua because it was such a small town.
Hmm.
But once I got away, I realized how awesome it was. And frankly, I was not in the camp of, yeah, let's move back to Canandaigua from New York City. We were looking at Austin, Texas, and Charlotte, North Carolina, and some different areas. But Stephanie really loved Canandaigua, and that's where the parental support was for help with the kids.
Mm.
Um, I almost looked at it as a defeat of coming back home. Not, even though I was in New York for 20 years, still wasn't able to cut it, and still have to go back home. But that wore off in about 2 weeks, and we're thrilled living here now.
Hmm. I love it. So yes, well, it's nice to see that you came back to the nest. Obviously,
Yes.
yes. What high school? What jobs did you do in high school?
I was working for my dad in the family restaurant,
Mm.
and the family ice cream stand. And that's where, you know, uh, my my dad and my stepmother and I, whenever we would go out to other restaurants or even in our own restaurant, constantly talked about hospitality without putting that term around it. So that was really interesting. It also taught me a strong work ethic. you know, as well as watching my stepfather work cases and just the amount of time and effort and energy he put in. So, but I started as a dishwasher, then quickly moved into busboy. Then, I waited tables. I was the bartender. I was the assistant manager. You know, and it was just a huge learning experience that I continue to draw on.
Isn't it interesting? I've always said about the restaurant industry, I was in it as well. And just how much learning there is in that industry, especially when you're young. I mean, there are so many facets to that business that you can pull off of that. I believe stay with you for life.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm fully encouraging my two boys to work in a restaurant in some form or fashion, either in high school or college or even beyond.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in New York City, you got bartenders who can clear 150, 200,000 a year, and waiters and servers. So it can be, and we've taken a lot of, it can be a true profession. And we've also taken a lot of cues around our hospitality mindset from Bobby Stuckey, who's a sommelier restaurateur out in Colorado, to Danny Meyer, who runs a restaurant group in New York City and created Shake Shack. Um, Being able to take that hospitality mindset and transfer it to any service business is um, I think it's important.
Have you read Unreasonable Hospitality about 11
Haven't read
Madison
it
Park?
yet, but I've watched his videos and read reviews of the book. And you know that goes exactly along. I mean, with what I'm talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
111 Madison Park or is it 11 Madison Park?
11 Madison Park.
11 Madison Park is arguably one of the best restaurants in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their level of hospitality is just pretty incredible.
Well, and he came up under Danny Meyer too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right. So when you decided to leave there, not decided, let's find this out. You're leaving the nest. So you're going out on your own. Did you get nudged or did you fly out on your own?
Do you mean the transition from working as an employee to starting our own business, or
No, from going out from yours, living at home with mom and dad, right? And then you off to college, off to
off to Boston? I couldn't get out of Canandaigua quick enough. There was no nudge needed. If I could have gone 1 or 2 years earlier, I would have.
huh. So you just flew out, like I've had enough. I'm on my own.
It's tough growing up in a small town.
Hmm.
Canandaigua was 15,000 people. You know, my high school class was 250 people, um, which is not totally small, but it felt small. And, having family that was fully integrated into the community where I got caught for every bad thing I did. There was no anonymity,
Right.
and that's what I love about big cities, is that the anonymity is I think it's energizing.
Hmm. That's cool. All right. Before I move on to the next question, I do have one last one here for you. Your dad, your biological dad, what was the number one lesson that he taught you or that you learned from him?
you know I could turn around and say work ethic, which totally is true, but the combination of having my dad and my stepfather, um it I treated them both like my fathers, which was great. And it was also great that they really got along and enjoyed each other. So it's something that I'm telling my kids now, is that, the goal in life is to meet all of your responsibilities while having as much fun as possible.
Hmm.
And my dad was really good at that, and on the fun part, as well as the meeting all of his responsibilities. And then my stepfather definitely uh exceeded where what he needed to do for his responsibilities, and had fun as well. And I really look at that as kind of an easy way to say, what's my North Star? And yeah, Stephanie and I say that to our kids all the time.
And what about on the mom side of things? What were the lessons learned there?
I have to give my mother a ton of credit because she was probably really the only disciplinarian out of the four parents. Her and I could butt heads a lot, and she was the one who held me to account. So I give her a huge amount of credit for that. I think the wisdom that my mom has imparted in me is that when something bad happens or a change is happening, giving me the perspective of how are you going to look back on this in a week and then a month and 6 months. And if you're not going to give it a second thought 6 months from now, that gives you an idea of the importance of whatever it is you're dealing with. The other thing, since we did butt heads, and she was the disciplinarian, is she didn't shy away from the difficult conversations. And
Yeah.
I think that is another little nugget and key in life, is to not shy away from difficult conversations, because usually on the other side of those chats is growth.
Mm-hmm. There's some sage advice right there. It's one of the things you said, that you had four parents, and some kids could take that of the push pull, and I'm not sure where I stand, and all those pieces that psychologically can go on. And what's interesting at the beginning, you said how fortunate you were, and how much you embraced it, and how much gratitude you have because of that. So you took it from what a lot of people would take as a negative, and you flipped it into a positive.
I didn't have to flip anything.
Hmm.
I was just lucky. And when a lot of other people hear that about me, they share their stories of, sometimes tragic stories, of strife and conflict in those relationships that I've heard over and over and over again. And I'm just eternally grateful that I was lucky enough to have a couple of parents who weren't going to let that happen.
Right. Yeah, very fortunate, for sure.
Yep.
So speaking of that, we'll see where this goes. Ethan, what's the greatest thing, positive or negative, that's happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Getting let go from um, my last full-time job. I moved up to we moved up to Rochester without any jobs or anything, and I started working at an ad agency. I got poached to support the CEO of the second largest employer in Rochester, which is 16,000 employees, 2 billion in revenue. I was also director of admin services, where I oversaw a team of 80 assistants. I was there 2 years, and I my CEO let me go, and that was a huge blow to my ego. I didn't feel that, from my perspective, I was treated fairly in that role, with in that partnership with him. um and obviously it ruffled feathers.
Mm.
I do have to say I was grateful that, while he may not have handled it in the best way possible, I did get a really um, a proper severance package
Mm-hmm.
that really allowed us to create ProAssisting in terms of what it is today. It was a big risk after that day to eschew looking for another full-time job and yet jump into, we're going to start this business. At that point, Stephanie had already was working a client, and we had already been doing our deep dive on the virtual assistant space, and we saw this gap, um, that we felt a business model based on our experience could really work. Uh, and you know hoping that if it didn't work, we could always just go back and get full-time jobs based on our experience.
Hmm.
But that obviously that was a moment that ruffled up my feathers. But now I'm grateful for it, because the position that we're in now, and all the work we've done over the last 6 years has it's been really rewarding. It's been stressful, but I do think we are kind of part of that tip of the spear in terms of where small and medium business is going, which I mentioned earlier. And I just think that it's just an amazing time to be entrepreneurial, and the SaaS products out there, as well as the fractional workers and the independent contractors out there that support and work with and partner with small businesses and medium-sized businesses, is growing by leaps and bounds. And you know, it's the easiest path to entrepreneurship is to take what you're an expert in and turn it into a service-based business, and then see where you can go from there. And that's what we're doing.
I love the fact too that there's a theme that's weaving through here. I said, how grateful you are that you had two sets of parents, and now you're grateful for getting fired. And so there's a theme that's running through this. This is fantastic. So now I'm not sure if you knew already, but Ethan, that geese fly 71% further and faster when flying in the V formation than when flying alone. So now, as a business owner and you getting ProAssisting going, what do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in the V formation?
I think of this in terms of what we do day in and day out, and it's about matching clients with remote fractional EAs. And the most important part is to have aligned expectations around what that looks
Mm,
like. And if the expectations are aligned and both sides agree to the rules of the road, aka our business model,
mm,
they can fly for years. And we have clients who've been with us since inception, 6 years ago. So I think having the strength to be upfront about expectations, and understand that sometimes uh, that person on either side of the equation is going to go away because they can't meet those expectations, is better than being a yes man
mhm.
and yesing someone to death to get them to become a client and partner them with an assistant, and then 2 months later it blowing up and not working out. The beautiful thing about support services nowadays is that it's a rainbow. There are so many different options at all price points, at all expectation levels, that you can, as a client or business owner, you can get extremely specific about what your needs are, and find the right service that fits you. But it all comes back to aligned expectations.
Hmm. One of the things I talk about is say about, flying faster isn't about flying faster. Flying faster is about getting rid of resistance. And when you get rid of resistance, you automatically fly faster with no extra effort.
Right. Efficient.
It's just a complete efficiency. And I think that's kind of what I heard you saying, is that when you make that proper alignment with, the assistant to the person, and then there's, no care and no love and trust, naturally, the resistance starts to go away and the efficiency shows up without any
Absolutely.
extra effort.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm sounding like I'm putting words in your mouth. So Ethan, this is going to be interesting because there's something that I didn't know before we got on the podcast. But what are you doing right now to better the pond, and like what ripples are you creating, and how are you inspiring others to do the same? But I really want to dive into, what are yourself and Stephanie and ProAssisting, what are you doing to better the pond? What are you doing to make the world a better place?
Well, I guess before this year, I would have said, we're really integral in the success of business and helping principals achieve their goals and give them back time. We've taken a big step forward in that because we're an expert two-sided marketplace. We have clients on the one side. And for the first 5 years of our business, we've focused exclusively on that client side to grow the business. On the other side of the business, we have partner executive assistants who we are part of that community, given our background as high level EAs. And now we've launched the ProAssisting Academy that is focused on taking career minded executive assistants and future proofing them with the world that is coming. And in November of 22, when ChatGPT 3.5 came out and really made waves, instead of being an ostrich with my head stuck in the sand about AI, like, I don't want to hear about it, I just want to keep doing what we're doing, it really kind of woke both Stephanie and I up and said, hey, we've got to come up with another revenue stream, another way to help people, another way to grow this business. And that's where we said, look, we've got AI coming. Our thesis is that high level executive assistants with that emotional intelligence and hospitality mindset is going to leverage artificial intelligence to where it's a both and as opposed to an either or. And I think that we can help EAs who maybe are 35 years old, making $70,000 a year, and want to make that transition into working for clients instead of bosses and maybe move their location. We've gathered and coached so many assistants through the process of partnering them with clients over the last 5 years, combined with our corporate experience. We really think that the ProAssisting Academy is the next chapter for our business. And it is about bettering the pond, and that we are giving and mentoring / coaching assistants on how to view their talents and their expertise in a way that can sometimes get obscured over time. And the beautiful thing about executive assistants is that there are so many different ways they can leverage those skills into businesses that align with their desires and their goals and their future.
So it's really all about them.
Absolutely. And the training is broken up into 4 modules, and 2 of those modules are focused on, one, their personal life, their personal relationships, their personal finances, their personal desires, their goals 3, 5, 10, 15 years from now. Because without that foundation, it's really hard to do great work as an executive assistant. And then the other one is built around their career, and digging deep in terms of finding those examples and stories of things they've done throughout their career that are above and beyond, or that they may have forgotten about, or they may have forgotten about and realized that they actually really enjoy doing those specific niche type things that could then turn into a kind of service-based business. It's been really interesting for us when we have a career executive assistant who's worked for companies for years come to us. Either they got let go, or they just don't like their path anymore. They take the leap of faith. They allow us to partner them with clients and to coach them through that, and to understand that it's a client service provider relationship as opposed to an employer employee relationship. And while that may seems small difference linguistically, it's actually a profound change. And that we've both, Stephanie and I both, have taken great comfort and joy
Mm.
in guiding our assistants on that path. And now we want to offer it to really any career minded assistant who really wants to future proof themselves in their experience.
There's two things I want to ask you about. One is that I find it so interesting that you know with your assistants that you actually dive into their personal lives and help them. Like it's not just now it's just no longer a transaction. It's no longer about let me teach you something. You're actually coaching, encouraging, mentoring, developing the people that you work with. So I mean, and I think that is bettering the pond. But I'm also on the next level of that, and I think it's really important to understand is that when they get that from you, they take that and actually take it to their families. So the ripple effect that you're creating.
We hope. But that kind of deep dive can also lead to some difficult conversations.
Hmm.
And it's not always smooth sailing.
Hmm.
Um, and, Stephanie and I had to go through that together when we were living in New York City, and both executive assistants. I was in advertising and she was in finance, and she got paid 3 times the amount of money I did. And that allowed us to purchase our home in New York City, which was outrageously expensive. And she's the one who felt the pressure and stress when the economy cratered in 2008, 9, and 10, because her bonus compensation went down and we were still having to pay this large mortgage. Um, and so what that did was, it kind of broke the stereotypical norms where the man has to make more money in the relationship, in heterosexual relationships, and the woman is more of the stay-at-home mom, you know
Hmm.
mindset. And that we had to have very open and honest conversations around our finances, around us personally, because you know I didn't want to shy away from the fact that she was really the breadwinner in the relationship. And whenever a newly engaged couple or a newly married couple asks Stephanie and I, "What's the most important part of your relationship?" It's the first thing that comes to mind is to be on the same page from a financial perspective. And you know, life nowadays is interesting, and we're combating this because we've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, both boys, who love their iPads and whatnot. But they see these influencers online with the Lambos and the mansions and
Yeah.
whatnot, not knowing that those guys are renting those Lambos and those mansions for a day
Yeah.
just to get content for their feeds. And it can that trying to keep up with the Joneses mentality has
Mm-hmm.
been around, I think, since the dawn of man. It's really about making sure that you have that foundation in your personal life to where you can excel in your professional life.
Hmm. Um, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, and both go. And it's not either or, right? It's the and. And I
Yeah.
but it is some kudos your way because of developing human potential in the people who work with you slash for you, however you look at it. But in turn, and we're hoping that they'll do the same for the people around them. So ultimately you're creating those ripples that is making the world a better place just by doing what you're doing. Like it's getting it goes back to just getting rid of resistance.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you are. I mean, I think obviously you're treating people very well. You treat people very well, people are happy. Happy people do happy things. Treat people crappy, they're miserable and they do miserable things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is pretty
um
Pretty clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without going down a rabbit hole, something I just want to touch on because I think it's fascinating. So we won't spend a bunch of time here because we can get lost in this one. But how do you see AI slash Chat GBT affecting your industry?
Well, I touched on it. Our thesis is that the human side of what we do is not going away. In our specific case, we are kind of playing at the high end of the remote support space. And the clients that attracts are individuals who want to know that their assistant is leveraging AI on their behalf, but don't necessarily want to sit down at a computer, look at a prompt, and wonder what to put in it.
Mm.
Um, so we're at a time now, and I don't know how long this window is going to be there, but we're at a time now where I think, as I said before, it's a both and. Um, that being said, BlackRock came out with their report in June that they come out with every year about business. And one of the charts that really stuck out to me was that the mentions of AI in boardrooms.
Mm.
And you see from going back to like 2020, and you see just a little bit of upkeep, and then boom, right after the November of 2022, you see an exponential jump. And so um, my fear is that those C-suite executives and those board directors who are having those conversations where it jumped to a high level, the expectation that they're going to put on their companies to kind of shoehorn AI in so then they can cut, you know, employees and decrease overhead, um, from a 30,000 foot view. Sure, it's simple, it's easy. But when you get down to it, it can have detrimental effects. So we're still in that period of figuring it out, and where AI is going. And you see that in how the companies are competing with it too. Like Apple is more of an intuitive AI company. They don't call it AI, and they call it machine learning, and they don't give you a prompt to enter things. What they do is they have Siri suggest, hey, you're talking about having dinner on Thursday night with John in text. Should I add this to the calendar? That's an intuitive AI that's happening. Or they're using AI to um, look at a photo and be able to pixelate the background of the photo to give you a bokeh effect. That's machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now, with Microsoft and ChatGPT, which they've invested $10 billion in, and Google with Bard, they are providing you with those prompts. And, Microsoft is leveraging it into their Office products, while Google is offering it into search. But yet Google's walking this very fine line of, if Bard is giving a searcher who's putting something in and feeding them up information without links to click, it could destroy their search business. So, and these companies are having to deal with these kind of these issues. And you said don't go down a rabbit hole, and there I go, right down the hole.
But just yeah, because I mean it is a slippery slope. But I still think the personally, I think just the importance of human interaction. AI is not human, and there's no emotion. There's no and we're still dealing. People need to deal with people, and I hope we don't lose that in some way.
I hope so too. They are training AI to detect emotion, but I don't know how far down the road they are to where AI is able to project emotion. So it's It's a fascinating time. I'm not the ostrich with my head stuck in the sand
Mhm.
anymore. And really that spurred us um to start the Pro Assisting Academy.
Yeah. And I'm gonna touch on this just because I just find it fascinating. I mean, you won a podcast with Eric Allen. You were talking about the perfect handshake, and right, but I think this is fascinating because there's something you said that really struck me. And you said there's the person there's the limp handshake. There's just nothing there, right? There's the person who's going to rip your arm off, which is the other end of the spectrum, right? But what you said that really got my attention was that when you find that sort of place in the middle, right? That it's a transfer of energy. That's what got my attention. And there's no AI that's going to give you that, in my opinion, that's going to give you that transfer of energy.
No.
And that, to me, that's the important stuff right there. That's the stuff that matters.
Yeah, in college I read this great book, and a bunch of us ended up reading it. It's called The Celestine Prophecy, and
Mm,
part of that book was about transference of energy in a room with different people.
mhm,
And again, it all gets down to the emotional intelligence of a person and how they leverage that knowledge within them, whether they're labeling it or not. But yeah, and with that handshake, when you have a nice handshake with proper transference of energy in terms of what I was talking about, that's the foundation.
mhm,
That's the foundation to where, you know, if I'm getting a limp handshake or that really grip strong handshake, in both instances, I'm going to be less open.
mhm,
I'm going to be less inquisitive.
mhm.
Um, when the proper amount, the look in the eyes, that's that opens the door to then going deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And again, as I said, that that was going down that AI rabbit hole a little bit because I don't believe that AI will ever give that. But that's the foundation to build off of. And that's, to me, that's the important stuff. That's the good stuff. That's
Yeah.
human to human interaction.
That's where I think business could explode. I mean, we had the extreme with the pandemic and absolutely no human interaction, no live events. I think we're coming into an age where live events are going to be a premium,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
uh, and having those experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, next question. What is one lesson that you've learned along your wonderful journey that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Entrepreneurship over the last 5 to 10 years has become the quote unquote sexy thing.
Hmm.
And um, it's it's all about patience. You
Hmm.
can't expect success overnight. You have to realize that it's a building process, and as long as you're taking 1 or 2 or 10 steps a day towards your goal, and you put yourself in a position where um, you have a long runway to do that, you're going to be successful. If you think that it happens overnight and that I need VC money to take my business and have it explode, the chances of that happening are very, very, very slim. So it's I think nowadays, if you can realize it, patience is a premium.
Yeah, that's something to be said for being a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and they really made that overnight success terminology, I think, uh, in in the entertainment industry,
Hmm.
and then it transfers to the um, it is transferred to the business community or the entrepreneurship wing of the world. Um, there's really no such thing as an overnight success. It kind of like the same thing that there's no such thing as luck. It's just when perseverance meets preparation. So these quotes that show up on LinkedIn or Instagram all the time. I mean, sometimes they're cute and pithy and and sometimes hit you in a good way. You just have to realize that when you start scratching below the surface and dig down deep, there's a whole nother side to the story.
Yeah. It's funny. The harder you work, the luckier you get.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's even
better. All right. I have one last question for you. And then I did not prepare you for, but so Ethan Bull, if you were standing on top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
I mean, I said it earlier in terms of meet all your responsibilities and have as much fun as possible. But I think on top of the mountain, talking to the whole world, I would probably ask the question, can't we all just get along?
So it'd be a question. And
Yeah.
let them figure it out. There's that coach in you. So that's a very interesting response. And I'm going to wrap this up by saying, the lessons that your dads taught you, right?
Yep.
About fun and responsibility. And, your mom's was about sort of, the disciplinarian, but holding you accountable, right? It's interesting when you say that last phrase, because why can't we all get along? Which is actually kind of fun, but responsible. But then actually, how do we hold them accountable? That just all came full circle.
I didn't try that. That was not planned.
It never is.
No.
So, Ethan, I really want to thank you for your time today. I know you've been doing a lot of podcasts lately. You've been very busy. You gotta,
People are sick of me.
But we love you. So we can never get enough. I do want to thank you for sharing your stories, sharing your wisdom today with my audience. If people want to find you, find your book, and all the wonderful things you're doing with ProAssisting, where do they go to find you?
Our website is proassisting.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Ethan Bull on LinkedIn. Hit me up there. If you want to schedule time, you can book a free consult from our website. And really, truly, it's not a sales session. It is a discovery in terms of what your needs are if you're looking for assistant support, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction, even if it's not ProAssisting.
That I know to be true. So I just want to back that up, because I had a client as well that I sent your way, and due to circumstances, this didn't work. But I will say that client was so happy that, number one, you spent the time with him, you didn't sell him, you still helped him, right? Even though it didn't turn into a business transaction, and he was eternally grateful. So, which says a lot. So I just want to throw that out there, that it's not a sales thing. Right.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Relationship. I want to find your book, The 29-Hour Workday. Where do we find it?
It's on Amazon. It's on Apple. It's in audio format. It's in digital. You can buy a hard copy if you want. All of that, all of the above.
Okay, so that's what they go to find that. We'll put that in the show notes so everyone can get that as well. And so there you go, folks. We had a great time with Ethan Bull from ProAssisting, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Ethan.
Thank you, Warren.